Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. As I see, everyone's joining us quickly, which is absolutely super. And today I'd like to introduce you to Florence. We've had Florence before, and I heard great reports afterwards. So Florence today is going to look at 3 models of craft and design businesses for startups to explore. So we're going to explore the models that craft and design businesses can basically utilize. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Florence. Thank you, Florence.
Thank you, Emer, and welcome everybody. So today we are going to look at, as Emer said, the models that craft and design businesses can use. I'm very excited to propose this to you today because I've been developing those models for the past couple of years, I would say even. So I'll be very interested to know what the comments are afterwards. There. So what we're going to talk about today are business models, and they are that's a big business speak, but we'll unpack it and you'll understand how it applies to your business. If you think about it, somebody who, let's say, designs hats for mother of the bride for weddings has a very different business than somebody who makes earrings that might be picked up for a wedding. So we'll go into the nitty-gritty really of how the businesses work and what is important for them and what's not important. So we're going to look also at what factors influence the business models in the craft and design industry specifically. We're going to look at examples of general models of business that are run in the craft and design industry. And I have 3 general models that you'll see which one you think you fit in. And then finally, I'll leave you with a bit of a framework on how to design your own model. Okay, so our agenda today, I've really kept it simple as usual. First, we'll learn about business models. Then we'll learn about the 3 main types of models that exist in the industry. And then we'll take pen and paper and we'll look at designing your own business model. Right, I've had to make a few assumptions to be specific in my explanations. So I've assumed that you have a product that you've developed to the best of your ability at the time. It, of course, is never finished, and you'll keep creating, you'll keep developing products, but you have something that you're working on already. And that this is a physical or a digital product, but it is a product rather than working, say, as a graphic designer or a service provider in the design industry. I've assumed as well that you want to make an income for yourself, whether part-time or full-time. So therefore, you will have to balance creative considerations and economic considerations. So you are very much looking at what this business can provide you with. Okay, before we continue, to introduce myself for those who don't know me, my name is Florence Magee. I'm a trainer and a mentor in the creative industries, and I have a bit of background, in business management through BA and MBA. I have been working in the creative industries for about 20 years, and I've been in support organizations working with artists for 10 years. I also was a hand weaver for 5 years in Dublin. So I kind of know what it is to have a craft business. As you can hear, I'm not Irish, but I've been living in Ireland since '98. And I lived in different European cities before or after this move to Ireland. So I would consider myself a European. Okay, before we delve into our big business talks, I would like to offer a little reflection for yourselves because I might talk about concepts and you might feel resistance from your creative self of not wanting to go there because I'm going to put things in box basically. I love this quote from Tara Sophia Moore, which says most of the problems in our creative lives stem from bringing the wrong part of ourselves to the task at hand. And she offers a model where each creative has 3 hats, one of an artist, one of an editor, which decides which work comes to be brought into the world, the outside world, and then the agent that takes those works that have been deemed ready to go out and promotes them. So just keep this little metaphor under your hat for the webinar, in case you feel, you know, your creative self balk at things, you know, and it's okay. It's okay to do so. Okay. Now I'm going to start delving into what are business models, and really we're going to bring you from your practice to the clients. And I would like you to spend time designing really a business that really suits you as a creative and as a person. So this business should help you make your best work as a designer or a designer maker. It should help you create a strong profile, working on your creative uniqueness and your personal uniqueness. It might be your brand, it might be your personal story, it might be the values you're trying to convey. It would be a way to avoid too much competition, because you would be differentiated and you'd be truly yourself, which is unique. I would like also to help you design a business that reinforces and benefits from the logic of your practice at its best. And we'll dig into that later when we look at production models. And then finally, designing a business really is looking at the income it brings you. Nobody has a craft and design business to make a lot of money, but sustainability and actually being able to live from your creative endeavor is, for me, a goal that most people have. It's not an easy goal to achieve, so really it should be baked into it from the start for your design. Okay. Sorry, I can see my face is in the middle of this quote, which is very important. So why are business models important? And I'm going to go into what they are very quickly. But your business model is really how the components of your business work together to create wealth for yourself and value for the client. And there's two very important words in that sentence. First is the word wealth, and I'm using wealth rather than profit or money, because I want a rounded view of what is success for you. And we'll look at it at the end to trying to see what your goals are. But wealth can be, of course, income, can be creative freedom, it can be flexibility, it can be whatever you want it to be, but having an idea yourself of what you want is important. And then value for the client. We'll talk about value in a minute, but it's important that you look at it as more than a transactional product against money relationship. Okay, now this is a quote from the Harvard Business Review, so very serious about business models. Business models are business concepts, and I'm going to read that quote, which kind of explains what they are, but you will go into details. Business models, they are at heart stories that explain how enterprises work. And if you work on your own, you are an enterprise, a tiny enterprise, but you are. A good business model answers who is the customer, and what does the customer value? It also answers the fundamental question every manager must ask: how do we make money in this business? Business models describe as a system how the pieces of a business fit together. And that's why I am very keen on it, is because you are looking at your business as a system, as a whole, and how it works together to really create, generate wealth for you. A slightly simpler way of looking at it, and you might maybe keep that analogy as we go through the talk. In let's say, if we look at goals as a travel destination, and then the strategy as the road you take to get there, it might be the high road, might be the low road, might be the middle road, then the business model is the car you choose. The business model is set. You don't really change it midway through the strategy, through the road. It has certain characteristics, like a car. It might be very roomy, it might be very fast. It will be adapted to the road you take, or it won't be adapted. So thinking about it like this, and that you can tinker with the car as well, it's a good analogy to keep in mind. Okay, so remember, before we go into more specifics, there's not one size fits all of how to run your craft and design business. There's not one craft and design business, and even between people of the same practice, the same type of practice, the same material, the same skills, there's very different ways of running what looks like similar business. All models that you choose have advantages and disadvantages. So there's no magic bullet, unfortunately. And the important thing is to take into account what you want out of the business yourself. How do you like to work, and how your practice works, and what are your economic circumstances? For example, when I was a hand weaver, I had to pay for my accommodation and I had to pay for my studio. And I quickly realized that none of the other hand weavers that I knew had to pay for their studio, and most of them owned their houses too. So they didn't have to come up with several €100 every month. So their business models could be different, and they could wait until the Christmas shows to make a lot of money, where I had to deal with something quite different because of my economic circumstances. Okay. So this is a little map of a business model, and there's many different maps, but it's to show you this is basically the map of your business. And we go from the core of what is at the heart of your business, which is your practice, to the outside, which is your customer. And we have basically two big flux that happen. One is the creation of product and value from your practice to the customer, and in return, the customer would give you money, of course, that's why it's a business, and attention, and retaining and capturing money and attention is part of your business. So at the core of how this exchange happens is the production of your product, from the practice, which creates the product, to deciding, editing what is the product, producing the product, so the whole production process, and then bringing it out into the world in terms of distribution, in terms of where you want to sell it, the selling partners that you have, and then finally the clients, the customers. It used to be a way that we had two business models. You either sold direct or indirect, so sold directly to customers, or you sold to trade. Things are much more complicated nowadays because everybody can sell direct on their website. The technology is there, and the trade partners expect you to sell directly as well because it helps increase your profile. So there's not this dichotomy at all anymore. Okay. Talking about value. Value is a big subject, so you might have some webinars about designing customer value, but looking at it, value is basically the sum total of what the customer benefits from the product minus what they paid for, what it cost them. And it costs them more than just the price of it. It might be the time that it gets to get the product. If it's really hard to get, let's say, to your studio and you're not available in shops, maybe the time that it takes for the product to come, or just, there is more cost than just the monetary value. In terms of benefits, there are more benefits to your product than just the material aspect of the product. Maybe it's association with your brand, maybe it's the fact that it's handmade, that it's unique, maybe it's being able to buy handmade things for somebody who loves handmade things, so being able to share this thing. There is a lot of benefits, and digging into what benefits your product bring would be very important in designing a special value that you bring and being able to actually communicate on it. Okay, so you're going to indulge me in my car analogy as I dig a little bit into what constitutes the business model. So looking inside is the practice, and it's the creative heart, of course, of your business. It's the reason why you're in business, and it is what makes you unique. And managing what becomes a product for sale and what do you not put out for sale is something very private, and I'm sure something nobody has got the solution for, but it is something that you will need as you have a business to keep an eye on, so that you keep creating, but also when to edit and when to bring the right product to market. So we design, but the product, what is your product? What is the product range? You might be there already. and understanding what makes it different. Again, it might be the product benefits, or it might be the associated benefits that we talked about in value. It might be what they bring to the client in terms of association, in terms of convenience maybe, or I don't know. And then finally, don't forget about presenting the product. It's an integral part of selling. It's the packaging, the presenting, that will be very important, particularly if you sell to retail. Then the production, again, looking at the internal bit of your business. How do you produce? Do you produce on your own? Do you have everything you need to produce, or do you need to actually go out and find it? And do you need partners to produce? Are you outsourcing your production? Do you need, when you start actually selling, will you need a network of people who can help you produce? Cost is very important, of course, because it will mean whether your business is sustainable or not, and therefore whether you can continue or not with it. How much does it cost to produce the product? How much does it cost to run the business? And if you start growing, what are the savings that you can make, and what are the expenses that you're going to have? I have 2 webinars on everyday finance for craft and design businesses that dig deeper into that, as well into costing and pricing, so you can refer to those. Now, looking outside, looking at the outside view, think about your clients. Who buys your products? Where do they buy it? Where and when and why? And then who helps you sell the product to the clients? What do those partners, they have needs? What do they need? They trade partners will need a trade price. They will need certain order size, certain fulfillment schedule. So getting to know what they need. And where do you talk to them? Could be online, could be following them on Instagram, could be doing showcase, or even visiting the store. Okay. The distribution is just literally how do you get your product into people's hands, but it becomes a big part of the business when you start doing volumes. How do you receive your payments, and do you know if you will have enough cash flow to run through the year? So, for example, if you do most of your sales during the Christmas period, how do you make sure that this money lasts you until the next Christmas period? And then finally, that flux of communication that comes back to you. How do you get people informed, keep people in the fold of your brand? How do you keep in touch? And how do you communicate so that it is in line with your brand? Okay. Finally, I'm going to talk about a business logic. So business logic is the guiding principle that's under your business. And it's not something that's really talked about a lot, but you'll see how it works with my examples. It's important to align everything you do in your business with that logic. And, it can be the work of a lifetime to do it properly. But let's say something like Chanel has a very different logic than Amazon. Amazon is convenience and choice. Chanel is luxury and quality. So they are very different logics, they operate differently. If you operate different logics within your business, it is very demanding, it's counterproductive, and you might not get the benefits from your efforts. Right. I'm going to continue with my car analogy, but only slightly. So we're going to look at models, and we're going to review 3 production models for the craft and design industry, which I believe are the main ones. So the factors that impact on how you run your business in craft and design would be the level of handmade, the level of uniqueness, the margin, so the difference between what it costs you to produce and the price that you get, so your profit, how much you can produce per year, and how much you can sell per year if production is not an issue. And our first volume would be a production model based on volume. So what type of businesses are we talking about? We're talking about businesses that can actually produce quite a bit. We're talking about batch production, cosmetics, candles, slip-cut ceramics, anything that's done in a volume that's large enough to actually sustain large number of orders. Again, using machine to produce, that can go into the next category as well, but there is a sliding scale between the first model and the second model, and finding where you sit is quite difficult and very important. Definitely any time that you are acting as a designer but not directly involved in the production, this is a volume model because you can increase your production. So the printed production, outsourced production, and then dematerialized products if you're doing patterns or templates that are selling online. In this model, the product is determined, you know your range, it is available, and you know how much it costs you to produce. But the production isn't limited or not too much by your time, so you can actually scale up. In cost-wise, the more you produce, the less it will cost you to produce because you realize economies of scales. But you most probably will be selling through other sales partner, not only direct because you want volumes. So you'll need to share your margins with probably trade partners. The logistics, the fulfillment will become important because you'll need to produce volume. So whether it's going to the post office to ship or making sure that you have the space to house your stock, that will become a factor. And when you do volumes, you'll want to, of course, sell direct, but find as many partners as possible. Looking at your clients, they probably know the product, they can decide on buying it without talking to you, and they will really react to recognizing your brand. The logic for this model is a logic of availability. So it's really being there when the shopping occasion happens, being in the shops, independent shops, in the multiples, or at the sale, at the fair, or at the market, so that people can recognize the product and pick it up. So distribution will be important. There's a chance that the prices might be compared with competition. So it's important to develop that brand recognition. And again, volume is what you want to achieve. So it's all about getting as many sales as possible. The second model would be the artisan model. That's how I call it. And the artisan model will be the typical craft, traditional model. So that it is very much based on physical skills and handmade. So it could be the jewelers, very hard to scale that up. Again, hand weaver, it depends, but definitely textile art, wood turning, leather working, stone working, all these really handmade objects. In that model, again, the product is of constant quality, cost, and labor. So you know how much it costs you to produce, and the range is determined. But the production is limited in the year. There's only so much you can produce because you're on your own. It's very linked to your skilled labor. So therefore, if you need to scale up your production above your own personal capacity, you will need to find somebody who can do exactly the same, or you will need to change some of the processes that you use. Cost-wise, there isn't as much economies of scales as with the prior volume model, because labor is so important in your cost, and labor is very hard to actually diminish. So you can maybe buy raw materials in batch and limit that a little bit, but you will still need to pay yourself, and if you grow, pay somebody else. And your margins is where, so the difference between what it costs you to produce and the price that you get, it might be where you squeeze when you want to sell to trade, because they will take a large markup. And because of the amount of labor, you might not enjoy margins, that make it sustainable for you. The distribution is more likely to be kept in-house because there's less volume, but the partners and partnerships in terms of sales will be important, because it will be finding those retailers that allow you to charge the prices that make it sustainable for yourself, and also that have the same ethos, the same push the same quality, put the same discourse in terms of using the materials and whatever. And then developing all the sales event, the direct face-to-face selling events or online, really becoming the face of the business. The clients are more likely to look for the handmade part and to know about the product. They're more likely to place a high value on the product, and finding the balance between how much you can charge, and what won't, what's a fair price for it, for yourself and for the client, is a big part, so that you can benefit the most from what you can produce in a year. The logic for it is exclusivity. So we're talking a more niche, more specific client type. People would be looking for something that is rare, that is specific, that is led by quality, that has a premium value to it. And finding a balance between being available and being seen in shops or in fairs and stuff like that, and keeping this level of exclusivity so that you can charge a bit more will be important. Sorry, I'm going backward. And finally, our model, third model, will be looking at the unique object. So a unique object could be somebody who makes a jeweler to create an engagement ring, could be a cabinet maker that makes furniture for somebody's home, could be some paper artist who prepares invitations for a fashion show or for a launch. It could be somebody working in the film industry that makes props and very specific standard pieces for filming, or it could be somebody who makes pieces for exhibitions. In this model, each product is different or has a very limited series. So there's not a range of product, not a catalog. It's very linked to the time of the maker, and obviously using very skilled processes. And you cannot reproduce it. So it's not scalable by reproduction. You can increase the size or the price of the individual pieces, but you can just start making loads of them. The cost would be quite high, of course. There's the cost of labor, but also the cost of research and finding the right way to do things, and probably the cost of high quality materials. And also very hard to decide exactly what the cost will be. Again, sorry. The distribution would be, of course, kept in-house, limited, but the partners is where the, let's say, the profile, of course, becomes important, and who you partner with and where you're seen. And in those type of unique object model, the industry is very important. So the wedding industry, for example, would be very different to, let's say, the film industry. They wouldn't talk to each other. Your clients would be more likely to look for a specific person or a specific skill. They would, of course, know what they're looking at, know about the production model, and the object would have a higher emotional value or experiential value. They'd be more invested in it because it's a unique object. For this model, there are two logics that I can see. One is the service logic. So it's when you're doing a commission, work for a client is quite different from selling just an object that you produced. It is a relationship. It is not a transactional relationship. It's transactional, but it's not. It's in the duration and the question of the quality of the product, as also the quality of the relationship. So basically, the how you talk to people is very important. The relationship and the other professionals is how you will build your network of clients, the word of mouth, and as I said, the industry networks, because the fashion industry works in isolation to, let's say, the film industry, which works in isolation to the wedding industry, which works in isolation to, let's say, the luxury yacht industry. And really, you will find that you're starting to develop a network of clients in a specific industry. The other logic for the unique model, object model, would be an art logic. So like we're stepping into the fine craft realm, and where you might make objects for exhibitions, shows, and galleries. And this is very specific. It's material based. It is within a certain discourse of what's current. It's validated by your education or by where you're shown and who you are associated with. And the prices, again, are even more difficult to come up with because they're really based on the medium, the profile, the track record. And, well, sometimes it's also a bit of the luck of the market of what is popular. So these are my 3 models. Is it that simple? Of course, I'm sure you came up with loads of examples in your head of people who do a bit of this and do a bit of that. And you can indeed go between models, but the important thing is that you know that each has a logic that is separate. And it is important not to try and run one model with a separate logic, or if you do so, that you actually align your business to what it means. So you can run parallel businesses, let's say having a product range that sells in shops and then do commissions. But each model needs to work the way it's supposed to work so that you have the right customer service and word of mouth encouragement with your commissions. And then let's say the margins and the fulfillment, the orders, and the social media presence that goes with selling to trade or selling with volume. You could be adding services to your model, and that would be quite exciting to see how you can twist things a little bit. And there's always a case for disrupting things. So if you take one of the models and different logic, what would it mean? Is it possible at all? Or does it mean that you come into issues like profitability or the amount of orders you need to fulfill? So it's just to give you models of how things could run and see where your own business could fit. Okay, so we're entering a final part. And we're going to talk about your business. So obviously we can't have a conversation. So I will let you do all the work and hopefully give you some pointers that will be interesting. So remember, your business model is how all the components of your business work together to create wealth for you and value for the client. And that is our map. And just have a little, quick sketch of it for yourself, from the practice to the customer, from inside to the outside. What do you give? What do they give you? And how you make sure that your systems are built up for it. First, we're going to look at what is creating wealth for yourself. And having a clear idea of your goals is very important. And they need to be your goals. And they need to be for the creative in you, for the business person in you, but also for your personal circumstances. Do you see yourself more as an artist, as an artisan, as an entrepreneur who's creating a studio, who wants to work with people? Do you want to keep making everything yourself? Are you happy to just do the development and have it made somewhere else? Do you want, solid do-it-yourself brand that you continue? It's really, everybody will have their own different ways. You might know that you need to create constantly, or you might be happy to design 1 or 2 collections a year. Again, it is your own makeup as an artist, as a creator, and you need to know that. You might know that you work very well with other people, or that you have not a great networker, nobody is, but you're happy to work within an industry, or you prefer working out of your studio with minimum, let's say, interaction with people, and just be the sole driver of your collections. And then finally, you will have needs for financial benefits. And I would encourage yourself to put a figure on it, and to know, it might not need to be very high, but know how much you will need to make this year, next year, in 5 years, because you're in it for the long run. And we need to see how your model can actually give that amount of profit to pay yourself. Okay, then you'll need to align your product to one of those models. And again, that is my framework, that is how I work, but I think it's a good start to actually see what fits you best. Are you more into a volume model that works with, being available in shops or developing sales, or are you more into an exclusivity, an artisan model, but you need to actually work at increasing your prices as much as possible because you don't have that much of a production? And making sure that whatever you do, you keep the model and the logic aligned. And there is, as I said, a sliding scale from the first and the second model, where you often have, let's say, more than a unique object production, but not enough to really do volume. So where do you sit best? How do you align all your business systems, including, your distribution, how you create your products, your costings, your communications, to that logic? How does it influence what you do, from creating the product to talking to people? And then if you mixed up, or if you change your production model or your logic, what would it look like? Can you do volume with an art logic? I don't know. Is it possible? Just maybe have a little play that doesn't cost anything. Then it's understanding really the value that you create for the client, and you can't dig into that enough. I know there is webinars about, creating your looking at your clients, knowing, how you actually bring them closer to you. It's very important to know what value you create. And my first question is quite conflictual, but when do you know that you run a business rather than a hobby? And if you go for funding or whatever, people will ask you that, or in disguised ways. There's generally we say because we start making money, but let's be honest, there's a lot of businesses that don't make money out there. For me, it's a question of outlook. If you start creating value for people, and it is the reason why you create, then you are a business, because you are creating value for somebody else than yourself. You're not just making for yourself and then just trying to get money for it, So it's this outward facing business that looks at what can you create for the client. And really digging in, what do you offer that is beyond just a physical product? Let's be honest, craft and design businesses, it's discretionary spend, it's not luxury, but we can live without most of it. So what else do you bring to the client? Is it being involved in a society that still values the tangible, the material? Is it about eco materials? Is it about being able to do a present or give pleasure to somebody? Is it about caring for the environment? What is the larger picture there? And how do you express this throughout your business model, really from your packaging to your after sales communications with people who have bought from you? And then running the figures. That's why it's important to have models, so that you can actually try it out for yourself before doing it. So again, I have 2 webinars on finances that will help you, work out how the figures might work. But it's important that you know what it takes for your business to run. It might be very different if you have to rent a studio like I did, or if you're outsourcing your production. And you will have to figure out what's the best price for you, depending on your costings and depending on the marketplace and your brand. You will need to know at which point you start making a profit, which is your break-even point, because then you'll start knowing how much do you have between your break-even, so when you covered your cost, and your maximum production capacity, because you're only at this stage one person, you are limited of how much you can produce or how much you can sell. So it's important to run both figures, to know that you'll be able to pay yourself at a certain level of sales and that your model is sustainable. Okay, so I'm finishing now, so wrapping up, and just to let you know what we've learned, because I actually talked about quite heavy concepts, but I hope that they made it relevant for your own practice and your own business. So your business model is really a systemic view of your business. It's everything from the products that you create to the customers, how your money works, how the communication works, and how the nitty-gritty of operations of how you get the product into the client's hand. Your business model dictates how your business best operates, how it makes money, how it can grow. If you use the wrong business model for the practice, you will run an uphill battle. And most of the craft and design businesses have models that are based on how they produce, on their production models, which is why I gave you these 3 avenues to explore. Most practices, looking at them, can happily run 1 or 2 production models, but not all of them, and especially not all of them at the same time. The logic of a model is very important to keep in mind. It's not, it's not the only logic, but I think that the most reasonable logics to look at, and how you aligned your business from the production to your customer value, your communications, your logistics. How do you align that to your production model and your logic is very important and really will make your business work in a virtuous circle. So actually be sustainable, but also be the best it can be, because it will be sure of its value. That's it. I've covered quite a lot, so there might be a few questions. As I said, these are models that I've been developing by working with creative businesses. So I'd be interested to know what you think about it. I'm available on networkofatoms.com and also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So please feel free to just drop me a line, see what you think, but it'd be very interesting. Thank you.
Florence, that was absolutely fabulous. And I've learned a lot. Listen, can we talk a little bit more about production being key?
Yes.
Yeah.
What it is, again, as I said, how I've just looking at a lot of businesses and working with some of them, how it feels that it is one of the things that is actually one of the set factors in how people would develop. And often business models you create them in reverse, so that you find something that makes money and then you design the business that goes without them. When you go to China and buy something and sells it for twice as much or 10 times as much. But when you have a creative practice, which is at the heart of the business, this is why you're in business, because you are very good at making chairs or making jewelry or creating new scents or whatever. And so for me, this should be the guiding principles under which you create your business, but it will fit one or two models. And if you, let's say, do something that's very expensive and very expensive to make, and you can't make a lot per year, trying to do a volume model where you sell into shops will not work, because you will yourself take all the cost, and it just doesn't work in the way that the distribution models work. That's why I try to separate depending on production models. I don't know what you think, Emer.
No, I totally agree with you, and it's an evolved model from the one that I started off with. I've always had this principle that with craft and design makers, that their product is the most important element, and that everything else can evolve from there. But if you don't have the design and the craftsmanship and the production as key and to your satisfaction, that you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think everything else can be brought in or evolved or developed or whatever. So, I mean, it was great to hear that. And I love your nuances of it. No, it's very, very impressive. I'm getting a lot of thank yous for you. And we're kind of silent apart from that. And my monitor, excellent mentor who joins on a very regular basis, was saying that you're hitting the exact right note and that your delivery is just absolutely excellent, which it is. I mean, it's really super clear. Okay, right.
It's great to hear. Well, listen, as I said, it's something I've been developing, and it's just, I think, because we all say that it's craft and design industry, it's such a general term, isn't it? And how you're going to make it work for yourself can be so different. It might be that you need to work only in commissions at very high level tickets, and there's enough in it for you to sustain a living. Or you're creating a design studio that you want to see in every shop in the country. It's very different. There's not one design business. So I think it's just bringing those nuances. I think is very important, especially when you're starting your business, because you may think that you need to do it all. You know, you need to be everywhere in the shops, everywhere on social media, and you know, it's good to know what is your road and what's your car.
Okay, I have more food for thought. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That is, you've got a comment that it's wonderful. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Florence in block capitals. I presume that means extra thank you. And we have a comment here. As a goldsmith, I follow the high quality, low production / scarcity coupled with high prices.
Yeah, I would absolutely encourage that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think that's a very good model to follow.
Mm-hmm.
I always worry about makers who are underpricing
Absolutely.
their work.
And there's also all the hidden cost of your stock. You know, yes. if you only, you know, if you're sitting on a lot of material and a lot of stock that you're trying to sell, it is a lot of tied up money. But if that's going to be an expense, you only make when you actually have a relationship with a client, you know that you can recoup the cost straight away because you're selling it. So you don't have all this inventory cost in financial terms, and also you are giving, I think, people the value of your logic of exclusivity, because you are giving them a relationship and experience of a high quality design, you know. And it is not just I'm going to pay it and get it. You know, there is a whole experience of working with a skilled maker, and that's the most valuable thing in the business is the maker. You
yes,
know, and it's that skill and experience. So the more you can bring people into that level of skill and level of you know, experience, uniqueness, and how you do it is very different. And I think the more it will benefit the business because you bring value.
Exactly. Someone is saying here it's very difficult to price sometimes, especially when you haven't had sales on an item.
Yeah. No, I agree. I guess there is, you know, looking at what other people are pricing is a good. I think there's two ways of doing it, and you should do both ways to see if they're vastly different. One is the pricing per costing, you know, so that you do your costings, full costings. Like the last webinar we did goes into that. So it's Everyday Finance for number 2, and you look at what the price should be, and then you do it on the other side of what is the market price for that type of items, more or less, you know, at the level of branding that you have. It might be somebody who's not in Ireland, and then you see what it gives you if you sell it yourself, you know. So and are these vastly different, or can you find a middle way that actually is the price that will give you profit but also be okay for the customer?
Okay, Dan's giving us a rule of thumb, and he's saying,
yeah.
My advice is to charge 20% more than your nearest competitor, never less.
Interesting. Good. It works if you have the branding that goes for it, you know, but it's again, it needs to be a whole business strategy, and pricing is some of the most stickiest subject, isn't it, in business, but it needs to come in within the whole brand. So indeed, if your brand is about exclusivity and high quality and stuff like that, it is a proposition that you will make with your pricing again as well. But it can be nuanced within the business. You might have an introductory range where people, let's say for jewelers, people in their 20s, 30s can afford the simple earrings, and then they can progress to a higher range when they grow older, you know. So you kind of bring people in at the start with, of course, not the same level of craftsmanship or material cost. You know, it has to work financially. But I think there's there's so many possibilities, and that's why it's, you know, nobody has written the rule book yet. You know, it's
He's also interestingly saying that it could be a strategy for building your brand, and only direct sell if the product is a premium item.
Yeah.
And we have Karen is then saying to us, it's difficult to increase a price when you're already trading, but you don't have a brand when you first start selling and setting prices. That's fair enough, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It is not easy. And what do you do? You know, how do you manage a sneaky relaunch?
Yes, and sneaky relaunches of adapted products if you've got your pricing haywire.
That's it. But it is, let's be honest, you're rarely going to start where you're going to end, particularly with pricing, you know, and,
Yes.
and some of it is because your brand cannot support itself. Some of it is because you're learning, you know,
Yes.
and you're learning to cost things properly and know what works. So, you know, how do you keep evolving as you develop is very interesting. I'm sure there's strategies out there. It's a good subject, actually. How do you increase your prices? Because
There's another one. Would you look at that for us? How to increase your pricing?
I can try, yeah.
Would you? Would you go off and have a think about that one?
Not having my head just yet, but it's a very interesting, because it is a strategic issue, isn't it? How do you go up to the next level?
Yeah, there's food for thought during this summer, and you might come back to us in the autumn with that. I think that's a lovely one.
Yeah, no.
Because I do approach it with other mentors in costing and pricing in its bold sense, but then, you know, how to have a strategy for increasing it. I just think is really, really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just said that the craft business model is very useful to our business. So I think, yes, we have a project for the day. I'm going to hold you to that one. And I'd like to thank our audience today. We have a large number of people with us for joining us. And thank you so much, Florence.
Brilliant.
And thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Okay, what would this first one like? You could maybe do two aspects of established and starting off. This person saying is how to increase prices would be a great topic. Okay, especially for those starting out now. Okay, and they're saying thank you very much. And Florence, I cannot thank you enough. And I can't thank my audience enough. You're fabulous as usual. So thank you very much, everyone. And bye-bye, Florence, and thank you. Thank you so much.